Hi, my name's Anna Serin, and I'm Director of Listings Development with the Canadian Securities Exchange. You're joining us for another market recap. I'm joined today by a returning guest host, Jordan Youl. He works with Bruce Campbell at StoneCastle Investment Management. Thank you for joining me, Jordan.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
I think Bruce was a little concerned. Your numbers were pretty high last time you joined him, so let's keep it moving on up.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I heard he's away this week because he's at a hockey tournament. I hope it doesn't end up like it did last night in Montreal.
Yeah, no kidding. It's good to see a Canadian team though in the Cup final, though, right?
Absolutely. It's good to see people in the street, even if it's unfortunate. Okay, so there's lots that's going on this week that we're going to break down. We're going to talk about Witching Day that occurred last Friday and how the markets reacted to that. We're going to talk about Biden. He came out with his new infrastructure bill for economic expansion, some big money being spent. We're going to talk about some sector rotation happening in the technology and cannabis space. And we're going to talk about a bill that passed in Canada, Bill C-218. It allows single event sporting gambling or sport gambling. This is a really good thing for some of our issuers and public companies that are out there. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to end off with our normal celebrity sightings. We have a great company on the CSE that's been very active out there with celebrities. So we're going to end off with that. So why don't we, first of all, we'll start talking about the Witching Day that occurred on Friday. Just to remind people, quadruple witching occurs the third Friday on the third month of each quarter. And it refers to simultaneous event, which is the expiration of single stock options, single stock futures, and stock index options and futures. So there's a bunch that all happens on one day, and usually it will affect the market. So tell us what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And, coincidentally, last time I was on the show, it was Witching Day back in March. And what happens is when these options expire, we typically see an uptick in market volatility going into the close with significant upside in volume. But on Friday, unfortunately, we had pretty significant sell-off going into the close on Friday. And what's really interesting is that, and we've been referencing this for the last several weeks now, we have been expecting an increase in implied volatility. I know my colleague Bruce has referenced it in the relative rotation graphs in previous market updates, but we are starting to see that rotation or uptick in volatility. So it wasn't overly surprising. But what happened on Monday, which is a very rare event, we take a look at the advance versus decline issuers in the S&P 500, and 478 of the issuers advanced on Monday. And, this doesn't happen very often where 92% of the issuers advance in one day. But what makes it even more rare or unique is that it doesn't happen very often when the S&P 500 is within 1% of its all-time high. So as equity investors and as the markets are hitting all-time highs, we want the number of issuers advancing as the markets are hitting all-time highs. So we still remain in a risk-on market despite seeing an uptick in market volatility over the last few days.
I have to say, we've been doing this for quite some time now, and I feel like almost every week we say, well, you don't see this very often. I mean, it feels to me like the markets that we're seeing, they're pretty new in how they're reacting to things. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, we're seeing some follow through, this week as well, with the NASDAQ hitting all-time highs. And we'll touch on it momentarily, but there's a lot of cross currents that are taking place within these markets. And, it creates a timely opportunity for new ideas and for investors moving forward.
I love it. Okay, the U.S. across the border, there was some big stuff happening. Biden announced an infrastructure bill that is meant for economic expansion. This is approximately a $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan that'll be laid out over the period of 8 years. It includes funding for roads, bridges, the power grid, public transport, and the internet. It'll create millions of jobs. One thing I did note on it before I ask your opinion about this is he is increasing, it seems, corporate tax from 21 to 28%, which is a pretty big jump.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me what you think about this.
Well, the positive or silver lining is that it got bipartisan support. Right. So, each party's not going to get everything that they're asking for, but that's definitely a positive first step. Now it's going to get passed through Congress, and the expectation is that they're going to get the 60 votes required to pass this, but there are going to be some hurdles and some pushback. And, this is going to be one of potentially many infrastructure bills that are going to be set and put in place moving forward. But either way, from our perspective, the economic backdrop continues to improve and grow. And, at StoneCastle, we follow a variety of different economic indicators to determine whether or not the economic backdrop's improving or if it's deteriorating. And we do have a chart of the US LEI index that was created by the conference board. And they came out recently with the latest data as of last month, and it's hitting all-time highs. So we've exceeded the January 2020 peak pre-COVID. So the takeaway here is that a recession is not imminent. The economic backdrop's improving. So this is very constructive and positive for the economy moving forward.
That's great. That's great news. He did do a speech this week, and there was a lot of whispering. Did you see that?
I did, yeah.
A new tactic to get people to listen. You have to listen in closely. I'm going to whisper.
It's a different approach than the previous president, right?
Maybe that's what it is. I never thought about that. I'm going to try not yelling, but whispering just to get your attention. That's awesome. Okay, we're going to talk about sector rotation for the technology and cannabis sector. I ask this of Bruce every single time just to make sure that people understand what we're talking about. Explain to us sector rotation first.
Yeah, so we're talking about money flow and the rate of change where, the fastest moving sectors are outperforming the respective benchmark that you're comparing it to. So as an example, we take a look at the TSX subsectors and compare them to the TSX Composite Index. And right now, we are seeing a reacceleration into the cyclicals and the offensive sector. So two in particular are technology and cannabis. And this is what we want as the markets are hitting all-time highs. We want to see the cyclicals and the offensive sectors driving the market as we're hitting all-time highs. It'd be a little bit concerning, similar to what we saw at the tail end of 2019, where the markets were hitting all-time highs, but they're being led by large cap defensives. So right now we're seeing technology and cannabis, two sectors that we have an interest in, really starting to take control of the leadership from a sector perspective relative to the TSX. So we have a relative rotation graph, and it's of the North American marijuana index, the constituents that represent that index. And the cannabis sector in particular goes through significant uptrends and downtrends, and we can define that as cycles. But, we've seen this before, similar to what we saw in, 2019 and last year in 2020. And you can see on the far right-hand side in the relative rotation graph, there's 4 quadrants. The constituents typically rotate in a clockwise fashion. And anytime the constituents move in a north-northeast direction, the rate of change is telling you that the underlying momentum is improving for those issuers. And it's really positive and constructive that all 60 plus securities within the index are trending in a positive direction. So as a group, as a whole, this could definitely be a timely opportunity to revisit the cannabis sector for new investment ideas moving forward. So as a result, we've been increasing our exposure to technology and the cannabis sector.
Well, I was just smiling there because I thought, was the cannabis sector ever out of favor? But I know it's so interesting. The cannabis sector, I've just so appreciated getting to experience it from the beginning, because really this kind of started coming to the capital markets in 2015. And when we look at graphs like that now, you realize that the sector's really grown up. I mean, we're entering a more mature sector for the cannabis space, right?
Yeah, without question. And, we're approaching quarter end and earnings are going to come out, but the MSOs, especially in the US, valuations today are a lot more attractive than they were several months ago. So as an investor, there's a few things that that benefit you. One is valuations have come down significantly. So the fundamentals are improving and valuations are more attractive. And the underlying stock prices have come down considerably off their recent peaks, more or less in February of this year. So, there's a couple catalysts right there and opportunities from a timing perspective to look at getting back into the sector.
Well, and I think that's a really important note for people to consider if they want to invest in the cannabis space. And what you're referring to, just to clarify, is, there was a period of time where some of these cannabis issuers, the valuations on them didn't really match the fundamentals. So people were so excited about buying the stock that would move the stock price up, but the company didn't necessarily have the revenue stream or the assets that would match kind of where they were at. So it's a good thing that this has happened, because now investment opportunities, when they're more closely aligned with the fundamentals of the company, create kind of a more a safer opportunity. Is that the right word?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as time goes on and as the industry continues to progress and evolve over time, a lot of these MSOs are, EBITDA or cash flow positive now. Whereas a few years ago, like you were saying, there was a disconnect between what the share price was doing and what, the valuations were. So, it is a little bit different today, but, given the fact that we've seen a track record of these companies reporting and seeing their growth rates, grow at an exponential rate, that provides a little bit more comfort maybe for investors to step back into the companies.
It's pretty impressive. I've seen some of our bigger issuers in the cannabis space. Wow, are they impressive? Their management teams, their execution, and these guys are moving so fast. It's impressive to watch. I mean, I'm in awe of these guys and congratulate them for all the work that they've done and spearheading the sector. Okay, we're going to talk about something that happened in Canada this week, and it will affect some of our issuers in a good way. It will also affect Canada. We're going to talk about Bill C-218. It passed through the Senate. Bill C-218 is a bill that allows for betting on single sport games. Currently, the only game that you can bet on in Canada is horse racing. And I remember going to horse track when I was a kid with people, and it was a big thing. So that is the only one that's currently legally allowed. This will allow for single sport game betting. So tell us about this bill and how this is going to affect the sector.
Well, it's significant on multiple fronts. Leading up to the vote earlier in the week, so going back to last week, a few companies in particular, whether it's a Score, Bragg Gaming, or Fans Unite, as an example, the underlying stock prices were performing quite well last week with anticipation of the vote being approved. They had their third reading on Tuesday, and now it's headed to a royal assent for legalization. So it's definitely significant, and it creates opportunities on two fronts. From a government perspective, it's going to create job growth and tax revenue, right? But on the issuer side, the growth and the opportunity is limitless. We're starting to see potential revenue growth, the ability for these issuers to capture some of the illicit market, and partnerships and M&A activity, and also access to capital, right? And case in point is Fans Unite. It's a CSE listed security, and after the announcement, they went to market and did a $10 million raise, right? So we're going to see a lot more of that as the sector continues to grow and expand. It's similar to the cannabis sector several years ago, where we're going to see more industry groups and niche markets start to grow and develop as the sector emerges and evolves. And we've seen, the growth, of online gaming in the U.S., right, in terms of revenue projections and opportunity there. So it's really exciting, and it benefits the government from a taxation perspective, but also tremendous tailwind and catalyst-rich opportunity for the issuers moving forward.
Absolutely. So Fans Unite, you mentioned, is a CSE issuer. And I want to ask you a question about them, because you brought up something earlier that I thought was super interesting. They came out, they did this short form prospectus to raise up to 10 million. And, they came out with a statement and said, this is really great for the sector. It provides access to additional employment opportunities, tax revenue, and safe and regulated platform for betting option. This is an important part of that statement to me, is that understanding that betting is still going on. This isn't going to be something that starts today, but providing that safe and regulated platform, I think, is really important and is going to capture some of the benefits, tax wise and employment wise. But there was another thing that they've been active in doing, and you were telling me about earlier, and it's operations in Brazil. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. And, this is just the early stages, but, as the sector grows and evolves, there's going to be opportunities to tap into other markets from a geographic perspective as well. So, and just full disclosure, StoneCastle, our firm, we did participate in that financing that was announced after the market closed on Tuesday. But yeah, so Fans Unite, one of their products just signed a licensing agreement with Brazil, right? And Brazil is one of the largest markets from a global scale with the online gaming and gambling and what have you. But it's also the fastest growing as well. So this happened this week, in addition to doing the raise and in addition to the bill being passed. So that's definitely a significant catalyst and opportunity for Fans Unite on its own, for sure.
And you were also saying, which I thought was interesting, that this is a sector that will be liked by money managers. It just has that sweet spot for growth rate and for expansion and revenue model, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said earlier, it's going to attract investment from institutional investors, retail investors. Analysts love, the approval, and they're going to revise their numbers. Management's going to come out with guidance, and everything's going to change, right? But the takeaway here is that it's very positive for everyone.
That's great. Okay, we're going to end off with, I've been doing this with Bruce now every week, and James, when you join me, the celebrity sightings. It's become a bit of a thing, but it really has become a bit of a thing. I can talk about this every week. So a CSE issuer, TAAT, came out, TAAT, and they have now been listed with us for 1 year. It's their 1 year anniversary. So happy anniversary, TAAT. We love you being part of the team. They've done some major stuff in the past year. So they celebrated their first year, and within that first year, they've expanded so quickly. They are a nicotine-free and tobacco-free smoking experience. So it's gone out there. They're kind of, I think they have some people involved with them from Philip Morris, which is obviously the tobacco company. So we're starting to see this type of stuff come to market. The expectation of what the sector will be as far as size is huge. They've been featured in Forbes, but the big thing that came out this month is they were the sponsors for members of Floyd Mayweather's entourage during the big match, the big anticipated match. There was over 1 million pay-per-view subscriptions or purchases for this fight. It was Floyd Mayweather and Paul Logan. And even Mayweather came out the night before to his 26 million followers on Instagram wearing the TAAT hat. And then last week they came out, and then they also announced that they have sponsorship presence at the Professional Bull Riders Unleash the Beast events that'll, I think, go through until 2023. I find it interesting that these issuers are out there and just have this huge presence, and I think we're really starting to see these influencers participate in this way. When I grew up, it was commercials. Now it's guys like this wearing a hat at a huge event. Do you think this is something we'll continue to see in the capital markets?
Yeah, absolutely, without question. With access to social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's a great way to get your product out there and show your product in partnership with celebrities and athletes, because they have such a significant following, especially Floyd Mayweather, right? So, this trend will not go away anytime soon, and it's a smart way to market.
Well, my social following is a little bit smaller than Mayweather's, but TAAT, if you want to send me a hat, I'll wear it and announce it to my hundreds of followers. Okay, Jordan, what should we think about going into next week, other than it's hot?
Yeah, it's going to be record-breaking temperatures, I think, starting today, moving forward. But so there's a lot of economic data on tap next week. We're watching oil closely. It's hitting a 2-week high right now, but OPEC, they're scheduled to, continue discussions, I believe on Wednesday next week, to determine whether or not they're going to cut production or not. So we'll see what the aftermath is with oil. We're going to continue to watch healthcare cannabis and technology. And in the US, we're going to continue to watch the financials. I know the Federal Reserve came out yesterday with their annual US bank stress test results, and all 23 financial institutions passed with flying colors. So that's very positive and constructive for the economy and the markets moving forward. And, we're seeing financials having a strong day today in the US. So there's a lot on tap next week for sure.
That's great. Well, listen, you are such a nice guest host. If you're not back before then, please come back for witching day in the next quarter.
For sure. At least 3 months out, right?
At least 3 months out, but hopefully we'll see you again. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay hydrated, and we'll see you again. Well, we won't see you again next week, but we'll see Bruce next week. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.